Hello everyone and welcome to KCM. In this video, we are going to start a Kafka cluster with Kraft and 3 Kafka brokers in few minutes. We are also going to do some basic manipulations like creating Kafka topics, consuming and producing Kafka messages. We are going to avoid using command lines thanks to this KCM tool, and here we go. So for the whole series of these videos, we are going to rely on the examples from the KCM Hub/KCM GitHub repository. I will put the link just below. This repo will be enriched with new examples for each new video. So as you can see here, the README file as soon as we arrive to the repo, and we will follow these steps here to start first the KCM tool, then we will go to the next step to create the Kafka cluster. So first step here is to clone this repository. Let's go. Then we go to the initiation folder to start the KCM tool. And here, let's check what we have. So as we expected, we have a Docker Compose file and folder and some configuration files needed to start this Docker Compose. But I have some specificity here. I'm not running the KCM and this tutorial in my local machine, but in a virtual machine. So we have to change some configuration in KCM to tell the UI port that it's not deployed in a local machine, but in another machine. And this to be as close as possible to production environment. So that configuration that I was talking about is in runtime config.json, and by default it's calling localhost as backend address. So I will override this with another file that already prepared. And the result will be like this. Instead of using localhost, I'm using the host name of my virtual machine. You have to change localhost by your IP address if you are in the same case as mine. So the next step is talking about creating a Docker network. So let's create it. And next, we will explain why we need this Docker network. And the final step, it's asking to start the Docker Compose file. Let's go. So the images are already pulled. Let's check the logs and wait until it started. If we scroll down just a bit, we will find some configuration about environment variables. And the two important ones for this tutorial are the two first one. This one, KCM default user enabled, is I kept it to true to create a default administrator user username admin. And the second one is its default password, and I kept the default value, so our user will be admin. So our application KCM is started. Let's check if it's answering. So I'm already logged in. So the first page you'll see is this one, and for login, as we said, we will use admin. Okay, it's good, you can connect. So let's move on to the next step, and after that we'll go back to KCM. So the next step will be at O1 Kafka broker. Same thing, we have a Docker Compose file and a README file. So I will stop the listening on the logs. and let's check what this README is asking to do. So some prerequisites to install Docker or Podman, we already have it. The Docker network we already created, and the official website of KCM. Next, it's asking to clone the repository, we already did it, and to go back to the second step of this tutorial. So I will go back to O1, Kafka Broker. Let me check. Yes, we have a Docker Compose file and the README file. So this Docker Compose is another service that will provide the Kafka cluster with 3 controllers, Karaft controllers, and 3 Kafka brokers. Let's check it here. We edit this Docker Compose and let's check what we have inside. So the first thing is the default Docker network that we created, KCM net. We'll explain later why we need it. So when using Karaft instead of zookeepers, we are no more dependent to zookeepers. So we are using the same image version to deploy a Karaft controller or a Kafka broker. The only difference is in the configuration. In controllers, we are telling to this instance that you are playing only the role of controller, and for Kafka broker, the difference is here, and its role will be just a Kafka broker. And this is thanks to the keep fab handle. So let us check what other configuration we have. Here in Kafka listeners, we are providing 2 protocols, plain text and plain text host. Both of them are unsecured protocol using the plain text. So we can see here the mapping. Plain text is the plain text, and the plain text host is also using the plain text. But the only difference between them is from where we are accessing our Kafka cluster. If you are accessing it from the same Docker network, so we can use the first one by calling Kafka with its container name and its port. And the second one is from outside of Docker network. And for that, we have to use the plaintext host port 9192. Let's follow next other steps. So it's asking to start controller first. Why we did this instead of starting the wall of the services or containers in Docker Compose? Because controllers are the replacement of zookeepers, so we have to start first the quorum that will enable all elections and all cluster managements and the generation of the cluster ID. Then we start the Kafka brokers, because if you start Kafka brokers before, they will not found the controllers and they cannot start correctly. Next, so we start the Kafka brokers. Let's check the logs. All good. All the Kafka brokers are started. Next, we will use KCM to manipulate this Kafka cluster instead of using command line tools. Here, the first phase is talking about groups. We can call it groups or environment. For example, if you have a lot of Kafka clusters in your company, you can separate them by environment or by group. For example, production environment, and, for example, training environment. And as you see here, for each environment or group, we specified a color. For example, I picked the red color for production and the green color for the training environment or group. If I enter inside this group, as you see, the banner switch color. It's like simple visualization that allow us to differentiate environments with this color. Let me go back to groups. I will pick up the training one. Like you see, it's switched to green here. And I will add our Kafka cluster that we already created. So I will call training Kafka cluster and the Bootstrap server. So now let us explain why we create this Docker network. When we started, we created two Docker services. The first one was the initiation that started the KCM here, Docker compose PS that contain the Kafka brokers here, and the first one was the KCM service, and here we have the KCM application. But by default, this application cannot talk with each other. Well, that's why in each Docker compose, we specified that the default network to be used is KCMnet for both Docker compose to allow communication between Docker services with the same network. And here I can call Kafka brokers using their container names. So broker 1, 9092, broker 2, 9092, and broker 3, 9092. Okay. To access this Kafka Bro cluster, we have just to click on this button, and I will close this terminal. And here we can see all details about our Kafka cluster thanks to KCM. Here is talking about under minister, who is the broker controller. Here it's another controller. It's not the Craft controller, but the Kafka brokers controller that lead the election of leader partitions and other things. So this one is the controller, and those are the other brokers with their ID 4456. In the core compose file, we saw that controllers have ID too now, and their IDs was 123, and the Kafka brokers for the 1, 4, 5 for the broker 2, and 6 for broker 3. And if you would check more details about configuration, you can click here and see all the broker configuration. So the next step will be the creation of the Kafka topics. So I have just to go to topics menu, click on add the topic name test topic. For example, I will create it with 2 partition and 3 replication factor. Delete cleanup policy and the retention with 1 day. We'll explain all this configuration in another video. So here our topic is created. You can see here the advanced configuration. For example, if I want to change the value of min in sync replica from 1 to 2, it's here to do that. So I switch it to 2. I click on OK. And here it gives me some recapitulation of what I changed. So I click on OK to confirm. I will check again. So here it switched to dynamic topic config with two values. In this tab, you can see the two partitions, who is the leader of each partition, and who are the ESR. Now, I would like to produce and consume Kafka messages using KCM to avoid using command line tools like Kafka Console Consumer or Kafka Console Producer. So first thing, I will refresh here to get my new topic. I will open another tab to open a Kafka consumer. No, it's consumer group, sorry, it's data consumer. I will pick up my Kafka topic and will start my consumer. In the first tab here, I will click in these three dots and produce. I will left it to automatic that will allow producer to choose automatically in which partition the message will be written. So we are not using schema registry, so I will left to force key with schema and value with schema, and then I will produce a message, for example, message number one, and the value, this is the message number one, for example, with some headers, X date, X year, for example, 2025, and for example, context, training, and I will click on produce. Good, let's check in consumer. It consumed, it's already consumed with the same key that we set and the message value with two headers, the X year and the context. This message is written on the first partition, partition 0, and the offset 0. So that's all for this video. Thank you all for watching, and see you in the next video.